What's going on, everyone? This is Kevin here, coming at you with my comparison of the Samsung Galaxy A53 5G versus the iPhone SE 2022. Now, these two devices pretty much have nothing in common, considering that they have completely different form factors and they run completely different operating systems. However, they were both recently launched and they also both have very similar MSRPs. Now, the Galaxy A53 5G features an MSRP of $449 compared to the iPhone SE 2022, which is being offered for $429. Now, both Samsung and Apple typically offer really good trade-in deals, so I would definitely recommend looking into that. I'd imagine that most people probably won't be paying full price for either of these phones, so I will be linking to these in the video description so you can see what deals are to be had. Now, these two devices are considered mid-range smartphones, considering that their price segment is pretty much halfway in between the lowest end and the highest end. Now, the first thing I want to discuss is the differences as far as the displays go on these phones. So you can probably tell already at first glance, but we have a much larger display with the Samsung Galaxy A53 5G. This device features a 6.5-inch display, whereas the iPhone SE 2022 has a 4.7-inch display. And in addition to that, the actual display technologies used on these two devices are different. So with the Galaxy A53 5G, we have a Super AMOLED display, and it does run at 120 Hz, which is a faster refresh rate, and it gives the phone a little bit more of a smoother, premium feel in comparison to devices that run at 60 Hz. Now, unfortunately, with the iPhone SE 2022, this display is LCD, and it does actually run at 60 Hz. So the refresh rate is not nearly as fast, and it's not extremely noticeable in the sense that it makes the experience really bad here and then makes this experience really good, but it is a small touch that certainly makes things a bit better for the A53 5G. Now, as far as display resolution goes, that is also different. We have a 1080p display with the A53 5G compared to a display that has a resolution of 750 by 1334 with the iPhone SE 2022. Now, that might seem like a big difference, and it is, but since the display is a lot smaller with the iPhone SE 2022, the PPI gap in between the two devices isn't quite as dramatic as you'd expect. So with the Samsung Galaxy A53 5G, we have a PPI of 405 compared to a PPI of 326 with the iPhone SE 2022. The aspect ratios of the displays are also different because with the Galaxy A53 5G, we have an aspect ratio of 20:9 compared to 16:9 with the iPhone. And then finally, another really big difference, and you probably noticed this as well, is the screen to body ratio. So with the Galaxy A53, we have a screen to body ratio of 85.4% compared to 65.6% with the iPhone SE 2022. Of course, a big part of that is due to them needing to make space for the home button at the bottom of the device. Of course, up top here, we also have an equally thick bezel. Now, I know that most people that end up buying the iPhone SE 2022 are going to be buying it specifically because they want a physical home button, which we don't have here with the Galaxy A53. So I'm not going to necessarily pick on this device too much for having a thicker bottom bezel, since you do need a thicker bottom bezel to accommodate the home button. But we definitely have small bezels all throughout with the Galaxy A53, both on the bottom of the device and the top of the device, and on the sides of the device for that matter. And up top here on the Galaxy A53 5G, we do have a hole punch for the 32 megapixel front-facing camera. Now with the iPhone SE 2022, we also have a front-facing camera, but this one is 7 megapixels. Now, as far as internal storage goes, with the Samsung Galaxy A53 5G, it is offered in multiple storage configurations, just like the iPhone SE 2022. However, with the Samsung, the lowest internal storage configuration is 128 gigabytes, whereas the base model of the iPhone SE 2022 comes in 64 gigabytes. Now, 64 gigs is still somewhat decent at this point in 2022. However, I've got to say 128 gigs certainly is the ideal minimum for me at least. And another nice thing too about the Galaxy A53 is that you can always add a microSD card to offload photos and videos, for example. Whereas you can't do that with the iPhone SE 2022, you only have the internal storage. Now with the Samsung Galaxy A53 5G, there is no wireless charging, which is certainly unfortunate, but what's awesome is that with the iPhone SE 2022, we do have wireless charging. Now with the Galaxy A53, we have a fingerprint sensor built into the display on the device, and we also have Face Unlock. Whereas with the iPhone SE 2022, there is no Face Unlock, but we do have a fingerprint sensor on the home button. So let's try out the fingerprint sensor with the Samsung first. So nice and fast and responsive. Let's try that out one more time. So there you're good. And then now we'll try out the fingerprint sensor on the iPhone. Very fast. One more time. So definitely very accurate there as well. So I'm certainly a big fan of Touch ID on the iPhone. I will say I wish they continued that on with the higher end iPhone models as well, but unfortunately those ones only have Face ID. Now when it comes to the cameras on these devices, there are some pretty significant differences. So I already talked about the front-facing cameras, where those are different in megapixel count, but when it comes to the rear cameras, there's also a lot of differences in the sense that we have way more cameras and different options and abilities with the Galaxy A53 5G. So with this device, we have a 64 megapixel main camera, a 12 megapixel ultra wide angle camera at 123 degrees. We have a 5 megapixel depth sensing camera to assist with portrait mode, and we have a 5 megapixel macro camera. Whereas with the iPhone SE 2022, we only have one camera and it is 12 megapixels. So here's how things look on the camera apps on both devices. This is with the main camera on the Galaxy A53 5G. Then from here, with the Samsung, we can switch over to the ultra wide angle camera to fit a lot more content into the frame. And then we can also go over to the More tab to access macro for close-up images, to have those be in really good detail. And then with the iPhone SE 2022, you can also get pretty close up, but certainly not as close as you can with the macro camera. And then both devices do have portrait mode. However, with the iPhone SE 2022, you can only use portrait mode with a person. You can probably see up top here it says no person detected. But with the Galaxy A53 5G, you can take portrait mode photos no matter what. It doesn't matter if it's a person or not. Then we can flip around to the front-facing cameras, and we can take portrait mode selfies. It definitely seems like the picture looks a lot better with the A53 5G for the front camera in comparison to the iPhone SE. Let me take a photo right now. We'll try that out side by side. So I didn't really smile or anything, but you can see there's the difference right there. I would say that definitely by far the A53 5G takes much better front-facing photos. So certainly when it comes to different camera features and abilities, the Samsung Galaxy A53 5G is the better option of the two. It's really better than the iPhone in all ways when it comes to taking photos and also taking videos for that matter, so definitely keep that in mind. Now when it comes to the amount of RAM you're getting with these phones, with the Galaxy A53 5G, you're going to be getting 6 or 8 gigabytes of RAM, depending on if you're getting 128 gigabytes of storage or 256. Whereas with the iPhone SE 2022, we have 4 gigabytes of RAM. So definitely less RAM with this phone compared to really any configuration of the Galaxy A53. Now when it comes to the processors, this is where Apple does have the better processor of the two, in the sense that we have the Apple A15 Bionic processor, which is quite a bit faster than the Samsung Exynos 1280 processor that we're getting with the Galaxy A53 5G. That being said though, with the Galaxy A53, I am really happy with the performance of it. It's certainly not as fast as some of the top-of-the-line Samsung phones, for example, but at the same time, it will definitely get the job done for the majority of people out there. Now, I did run a benchmark test using Geekbench 5 with both of these phones, and you can see the scores from that test right here. Now, this is kind of like comparing apples to oranges in the sense that we do have two completely different operating systems here, but you can see there are the single-core scores. Essentially, the scores are more than double on the iPhone compared to the Galaxy A53. But again, I wouldn't take this too seriously in the sense that we're comparing an iPhone to an Android device, and the way that they do the benchmarking is a little bit different to my understanding. But regardless, the iPhone is going to have the faster processor of the two. That being said though, with such a small display, I'm not sure how many tasks you're actually going to be doing on this phone that would require you to actually use up most of the power that this phone is capable of providing. Now, as far as battery capacity goes, that's a major difference between these two devices. So the Galaxy A53 5G has a 5,000 milliamp hour internal battery compared to a 2,018 milliamp hour battery with the iPhone SE 2020. So the battery on this device is smaller than even half the size of the Galaxy A53 5G. That being said though, Apple does do a nice job optimizing the device to give you decent battery life. but if I had to pick one or the other when it comes to overall battery life, I would say that I'm definitely a bit more confident in the Galaxy A53 5G. Now, I'm not really going to compare the operating systems of these two devices in this video as they are completely different. In my opinion, it really comes down to personal preference. I know people that really like Android, and I also know people that really like iOS. And for the most part, people that are really into iOS are not really looking to get an Android phone because they would have to rebuy all their apps and switch over quite a few things. And it's really the same way if you wanted to go from Android to iOS. So I think both platforms have their pros and cons, and it really comes down to your own personal choice. Now, both of these devices do have NFC. So with the Galaxy A53 5G, you can use Samsung Pay. And then with the iPhone SE 2022, we have Apple Pay. And then both of these devices do feature IP67 dust and water resistance. So you can go underwater for up to 1 meter for up to 30 minutes. And both of these phones have stereo speakers, which is really nice. Now, when it comes to build materials of these phones, technically, the iPhone has better build materials. However, I know somebody's going to mention in the comments that this design has been reused for a very long time. Pretty much ever since the iPhone 8, we've had this general design, but even if you compare this phone to the iPhone 6, there really aren't a ton of differences. That phone had a metal back, whereas this one has a glass back, but essentially this design has been used for a very long time. But that's not necessarily a bad thing, because I know a lot of people that have phones in this form factor from Apple, and they don't see any reason to change things. They like the small form factor. They like having the home button, and believe it or not, there's a lot of people out there that just want a good working smartphone. They don't care that the design has been reused for multiple years. They just want a phone that works, and I certainly understand that. Now, if you do want a more updated, interesting design, of course, the Galaxy A53 looks quite a bit more modern compared to the iPhone SE 2022, but that really does come down to personal preference and what you're actually looking for with a smartphone. But one thing's for sure, the materials are higher end with the iPhone SE 2022. The phone has metal sides and a glass back, whereas with the Galaxy A53 5G, this phone is made completely of plastic, besides the display, of course, which is made out of glass. But then taking a look at the left side of both phones, on the Samsung we have nothing, and then on the iPhone we do have the mute switch, and then volume up and volume down. On the right side of these devices, on the Samsung we have volume up, volume down, and the power button, whereas with the iPhone SE 2022, we have the power button, and then the slot for the SIM card. Then on the top of the two phones, we have nothing on the iPhone, whereas on the Samsung, we have the noise canceling microphone. And then on the bottom of these devices, on the Samsung, we have the slot for the micro SD card and SIM card, microphone, USB-C port for charging and data transfer, and we have the speaker. And then on the iPhone, we have the speaker, microphone, and the lightning port. And then on the back of these two devices, on the Galaxy A53 5G, we have the quad camera setup with the flash and Samsung logo. And then on the iPhone SE 2022, we have the camera, flash, microphone, and we have the Apple logo. So I hope this video provided you with a decent overview of the various similarities and differences between these two devices. One thing's for sure, they definitely are very different, but at the same time, people often have different preferences. So I'm really curious to know which of these two phones you'd prefer to go with if you had to pick one over the other. But this concludes my comparison of the Samsung Galaxy A53 5G versus the iPhone SE 2022. If you enjoyed the video, give it a thumbs up. But this is Kevin here, and I will see you in the next video. Take care and have a great rest of your day.